Welcome to Walking with Spirit with Dr. Ruth Anderson on the International Angels Network. Today is Thursday, June 14, 2018. I'm your host, Ruth Anderson, and I'm coming to you from Colorado. Tonight's show has been pre-recorded, so we will not be taking any callers. I'm an author and a spiritual counselor providing individualized transformational experiences for my clients using Holy Fire Reiki, energy work, and connection with the spiritual divinity, including Divine Mother, Archangels Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. Here at International Angels Network, we explore spirituality, angels, spirit guides, our loved ones on the other side, and much more. Our radio podcasts are available to you on Google Play, iTunes, Podbean, and Stitcher. These are all easy sites to use and make it very simple to listen to our archive shows. Tonight is our second week of our 5-week mini-series with guest Linda Dierks. Linda will be leading us in our learning about self-esteem, energy, and spirituality, and how together they can propel us into stepping into our authentic power. It has been inspirational and motivating thus far. This episode of International Angels Network is sponsored by Holistic Light Rejuvenation Center. For more information, visit holisticrejuvenate.com. Sunday Sturgeon is the founder and CEO of Holistic Light Rejuvenation Center and one of our hosts, and she is the sponsor of our Sunday and Thursday radio shows. We are pleased to announce that International Angels Network is now also sponsored by Audible by Amazon. If you go to www.audibletrial.com/International Angels Network, you can get a free audiobook. So please check that out today. I would like to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to listen in. This show is called Walking with Spirit. Walking with Spirit means consciously living in the physical realm with frequent connection to the divinity in the spirit realm, and being open to all that they want me to experience. Every day I check in with my guides, Divine Mother and God, sometimes seeking guidance, sometimes seeking connection, and sometimes seeking their healing abilities. Many days I receive lessons by hearing, seeing, or feeling signs coming in from the energetic realm. I never know what my day is going to look like or what the next learning might be. Each week, I share a story about an experience I had while walking with Spirit. Here's my story for this week. I provided a spiritual counseling session for Leonard. In his late 60s, he had a complicated medical history, including falling from the second story through the roof onto the floor doing construction work, followed by 2 bouts of dysentery during traveling. The last 40-some years of his life had been wrought with fatigue, significant digestion issues, lack of thirst or hunger, and the need to rest 3 or 4 times a day. Over the years, he met with many doctors, specialists, and energy healers. I looked at Leonard energetically. I heard Indian music. I saw him in a mass of souls, and that by being in this mass of spirits, he could commiserate and connect with those souls. I saw that his body looked broken, as his lower back, which did not allow for the movement of any energy between his upper and lower bodies. I watched as my guides came into the room, Divine Mother, Archangel Michael, Archangel Raphael, and Archangel Gabriel. Wait a minute, what is this? There was a being I didn't recognize in the shape of a statue elephant god. I then recognized the figure as Ganesh, the most popular Hindu god. Ganesh has an elephant's head, and his role is the Lord of Obstacles. Ganesh is prayed to at the beginning of any undertaking, and whenever a devotee faces insurmountable problems in their life or otherwise gets stuck, that's when the Elephant Lord can arrive to clear the way. I was pleased and honored to see this Hindu god and was excited to see what our healing session would consist of. What I then found out from Leonard was that his travels had been to India, so this was all making sense to me. Leonard expressed regret that because of his health, he had not been able to realize his life's purpose. I started working with Reiki energy. Using bias and scanning, I surveyed where he had stuck energy in his body. My attention was drawn to his intestines, his right hip, and the area of his spine where his spine had been fused. As I worked with the Reiki energy on his intestinal area, I felt gurgling moving throughout his intestines. Divine Mother came and held her hand on Leonard's left hip. Archangel Michael hovered above to his right hip. Divine Mother then put one hand on both of his hips. Archangel Michael then stood at Leonard's feet and had one hand on each of the soles of Leonard's feet. I stepped back, held space, and felt the healing energy. I knew that the healing energies of the spiritual divinity would far surpass mine. Then Ganesh laid a thick blanket of healing over Lawrence. We sat for a few minutes of quiet healing. I asked Leonard what he thought his life purpose was. He said his spirituality. I looked back at his energy before he ever came into this lifetime. His energy out on the threshold showed very bright golden energy, which signified to me connection to spirit. I asked him, did he have to be healthy to fulfill this life purpose? He answered no, but the version that he thought his life purpose would look like wasn't possible without good health. Clearly, Leonard had a gift of processing and assimilating a great deal of spiritual information and could break it down and reteach it to others so they could understand it. I saw him teaching others, but he could not travel to resorts to teach workshops. I saw the need to reframe how he could teach, perhaps via podcast out of the comfort of his living room. Then I saw the need to reframe who his audience was. The audience could consist of others who are incapable of traveling to workshops due to their own health issues. I saw him teaching the masses of people who were similarly compromised. After settling into the healing modalities, I looked at his chakras and at the underlying organs. I saw his abdominal area was black and dead. As I looked behind the black area, I saw a gaping wound. Leonard thought it was his inner child or inner children crying out in pain, percentage of the time he was in resistance to his physical limitations versus how much of his time was he in acceptance, understanding, and appreciation of his situation. He stated that more than 50% of the time he was in resistance and wanting his situation to change. He realized that by being in resistance to what had been his reality for the past 40-some years, that he was creating a war within himself. He was at war with what was, and he was ultimately the victim of that war, not to mention the amount of time he wasted wishing for something to be different. As I looked at the gaping wound, I saw grief. Grief for what his reality is. I saw that the depth of the grief is the depth of the grief that his listeners will have been going through as well. Who better to teach others in this grief than someone who has been through it himself? I saw that only when he is in the space of acceptance can he work to help and teach others. In order to truly help others, he needed to spend more time in an attitude of acceptance of what is and what can be. I encouraged Leonard to stop fighting what is. When he had those moments of, I hate this, to stop, reframe, say, this just is, and then try to accept it, find something to learn from it, and how to use that to help others. Every time he found himself thinking, poor me thoughts for the next few days, I encouraged him to stop and reframe his thinking. Now, this didn't mean that he was to stop looking for solutions, but stop wallowing in how miserable his life is, that it isn't what he was wanting it to be, because that period of time was not serving him, nor was it serving anybody else. My time with Leonard showed us both a life lesson, that sometimes in order to move forward, you might need to stop fighting what isn't, accept what your reality is, and move on with new definitions of what is possible and how you can achieve it. Thank you for listening. I would now like to tell you about Linda Dierks, our guest host for this 5-week mini-series, Step Into Your Power. Linda comes to us with a career in corporate America under her belt. She spent the bulk of her career as the director of a regional chamber of commerce, worked for a counseling program, and as the director of a small college. Her decade-long journey of discovery started as a cancer patient disabled by fear and depression. After studying several alternative health modalities and wellness philosophies, she found accelerated healing and joy in the integration of science and spirituality, and now helps others achieve self-empowered physical and mental wellness. Linda is a pioneer of self-wellness through the mechanics of energy, power of thought, and love. As a speaker and author, she illustrates and models the methods behind her triumph over illness and depression. Linda's passion is teaching energy medicine workshops for people suffering from cancer and major illness, addressing stress and substance abuse, and enhancing intuition, creativity, and problem-solving skills. Linda's writing has been featured in the March edition of Guide for Spiritual Living, Science of Mind magazine. Her article titled Growing Through Adversity, Finding the Gift in Illness, Adversity, and Spirituality is truly inspiring. This article and her blog, Creating Joy and Wellness, are both available on her website, spinstrawtogoldnow.com. So without further delay, it is my honor to welcome Linda Dierks. Linda, are you with us?
Hi, Ruth. It's a pleasure to be here.
How are you, Linda?
I'm doing great. Before I launch in, I wanted to comment on a couple of notes from your piece. First of all, Ganesh. I keep a statue of Ganesh on my desk, knowing that I always need help removing blockages. So thanks for confirming the power that's in Ganesh. And nice to know that you have some Hindu gods working with you as well.
I was surprised. I have not ever experienced that. So to have this statuesque god in my basement with me really caught my attention.
Well, he's a good one to keep around. And I also want to say that I was really inspired about Leonard's story, and I hope that he's listening tonight, because I absolutely feel that was the purpose behind my having to go through the dark ages, so that I would be better qualified at reaching others like me, that I had actually lived the experience that they're going through of being sick and being depressed. So anyway, it was a wonderful story about Leonard. Before I launch in, I'm going to go through just a couple of review points from last week. One of which we were talking about, being genuine and being authentic. And I wanted to reinforce what I had said about being a marionette. When you're a marionette to others, you feel like you're dancing on strings. And when you follow your true course, when you follow your compass, you become less reactionary to those peaks and valleys in life, and you just have more pleasure in life. And that, on having more pleasure in life, we talked quite a bit about joy and the importance of expressing joy in our life, because joy is a pure energy, it's a positive energy, it's a high-frequency energy. And then when that moves through us, we're connecting more with the divine. And I have this great quote that I read, and evidently this is a quote that Stephen Colbert keeps on his desk. And it says, "Joy is the most infallible sign of the existence of God." I think that's a great one. Isn't it lovely? Joy is the most infallible sign of the existence of God. And then the last point I wanted to make is, we always complete the energetic cycle of what we're trying to create when we pass it along, and that is to remember to let other people be themselves also. We want to be allowed to be genuine and authentic, and we need to assess how we deal in our relationships and make sure that we're allowing others to be genuine and authentic also. So that's my wrap-up from last week. And this week we're going to talk about embracing your gifts, that we have so many gifts. And I start with this wonderful quote from a song called Light of the World from the play God's Spell. "And if your light's under a bushel, it's lost something kind of crucial. You got to stay bright to be the light of the world." You are endowed with distinctive gifts, a mix of talents, skills, and interests that light you up and set you apart. Do not launch your gifts or let them languish. Do you launch your gifts or let them languish behind old voices that are saying to you, "Don't be too big for your britches. Quit being a show-off." This is my favorite. Be ladylike. And how much talent has been shut down with, "Who do you think you are?" I recognized myself in the new term, fear of outshining. Those of us who downplay our skills so we won't stand out or threaten others. Have you turned down the volume on your talent in favor of fitting in? Allow yourself to shine, and you will inspire, not intimidate. Dare to be special. Our gifts provide the platform that allow us to reach up and grab that fruit of boundless potential and possibility and become the best version of ourselves. Recognize, accept, and unwrap them. Rise to the joy of it. When you embrace your gifts, you open to the wisdom of the universe. A divine presence has your back. And here's my keynote. Spirit bestowed you with these gifts as a means of expressing through you. When you embrace your gifts, you enhance that flow of divine energy. And quote, "Stand in our strength. Stand in your strength. Don't deplete your power with fear, jealousy, or unworthiness. When you live from attunement with me, there is no fear." Let me repeat that. When you live with attunement with me, there is no fear. And that was given to me by my guide way back in 2011, when we talked earlier about as we learn and grow in consciousness. So that was my blog in the second part of the Step Into Your Power series. I write these blogs intentionally with 3 quick paragraphs, a key idea, and a quote, and I intentionally keep them brief. And sometimes, as we say, it's very difficult to put 10,000 words into 3 paragraphs.
Well, but I think you do. I think your blogs give us a lot of information, not too much that we can't hold on to it and do something with it. But your quote that your guide gave you, "When you live from attunement with me, there is no fear." And for some reason this week, I've been reminded of a saying from the Bible, from Paul, and it was in Philippians, and I don't remember the verse number, but it was Paul was in prison, and his congregation, if you will, had provided some funds, some financial support for him, and he was appreciative of it, but he didn't want to sound like he was, not grateful for the situation he was in. But his saying is, "I've learned in whatsoever situation I am in to be content." And to me, that is right along with when you live from attunement, there's no fear.
Mm-hmm.
You can really come from a place of no fear, contentment, and sort of all is right with the world, even when the reality of the world is crumbling around you. You, in your own knowingness, can know that you're fine. as long as you are in attunement with spirit.
I'm gonna layer that with a quick story also that was told to me by a dear friend of mine who's a spiritual counselor, and she has been dealing with a lot of elder care issues, and she had to make a lot of decisions, and some of them were great and some of them weren't great. And she said, if I make a decision from spiritual attunement and it doesn't work out, then that's okay, because I made the decision from spiritual attunement. And and I just thought that was a wonderful way to look at it, that, you know, things may not play out always as we expect, but if they are done from our heart, if they come from spiritual attunement, then that's okay. There's not, you know, the impact that we think there is. So, stepping into embracing your skills. The first question that everybody's going to say is, you know, what are my skills? And last week we did a quick exercise and we talked about skills and qualities. I will mention also that if people, you know, it's very easy to go back, and Ruth will give you the information to go back and find the archives of these shows if you want to re-listen to them. But what are our skills and qualities? So taking it a step further, we're uncovering new facets of ourselves. We're kind of following, you know, our muse. And these are some questions you can ask yourself. What do you love to do? And again, this kind of ties in with our conversation about joy. If there's something that just really gives you pleasure, that's a really good indicator of what your skills are. What do I engage in where I lose track of time? Do you know people who paint or compose or like to be outdoors, and it just seems like a timeless activity for them? What just seems to flow through you effortlessly? If you're taking on a task or an interest or a skill, and it just seems not like it's not flowing for you, it's becoming just too much of an effort, then that's probably not where you ought to be going. And, of course, if you didn't have any barriers of time and money, what would you be doing? Wouldn't it be nice to sit back and say, okay, what would I be doing with my time if I didn't have any barriers in my life?
Can I answer those couple things?
Sure.
Just take a second and do that?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So for me, where I lose time, and this is not how I lost time 5 years ago. This is, you know, in my new role of spiritual being, teacher, speaker, writer, etc. I lose time literally just sitting and connecting in with the divinity. I literally can lose so much time doing that, and I can also lose time just writing about it. It's actually, those couple things are solo activities, and so I need to consciously remind myself to put myself like into the world, which, you know, thankfully I've got a family to drag me back into the world. But those are solo activities for me, but I definitely lose time there. And then your second question, if like money was no issue and time was no issue, what would I be doing? And I would be doing exactly what I'm doing, which is connecting with the divinity, writing about it, speaking about it, and trying to educate others about it. I have to believe that I am firmly in the place I'm supposed to be at this time. What about you, Linda? What would you be doing?
You know what? That's absolutely perfect. I hadn't thought of that. But what would I be doing? I would be doing what I'm doing right now. Well, first, I would go back to your connection. First of all, you have just an amazing level of activity, and the work that you're doing and the windows that you're opening for people are miraculous. I see what you're doing as you're connecting and also as you're writing as kind of a cosmic flow. You almost step into do you almost feel like you're stepping into a different dimension when you're there, when you're doing this work?
Yep. I do.
Stepping into a different dimension. If I didn't have any barriers, I also would be doing exactly what I'm doing now. But there are some things that I have always wanted to do if I had the time. I would like to, and all of them would be things that would feed my work. So it all ties back in. I'd love to travel and visit some of the great spiritual sites in the world. I'd like to go on hiking trips, which is one of the things that most feeds my spirituality. So it all ties back into the same thing. But isn't it wonderful to know that you're in that cosmic flow and you're feeding exactly what you're supposed to be?
Yes. I feel like I could ride this out and have this be my last career, and I'm only late 50s, so I think this one's a keeper.
I think this one's a keeper. I think that when you step onto a spiritual path, and for those of us who have been designated to be instruments and have this pass through us, I don't think we ever step off of it. I think this is a keeper for you also, Ruth. I think you're here for keeps, Ruth.
Thanks.
there was another thing that may bring up some really fun conversation too, and that is to look at what did we do? What were our childhood interests that really drew us, and they faded away as we were asked, what are your education choices? What are you going to be when you grow up? And certain options were made available to us. And I'll tell you a little bit about my childhood. I've always been a great outdoors person, but when I was a kid, I loved collecting rocks, and the rocks just spoke to me. I could just feel the energy in these rocks and the different textures and forms. But when I was a kid, when I grew up, now I don't want you to laugh at me. When I was a kid, when I grew up, I wanted to run a fish hatchery. I was fascinated by fish hatcheries and the beautiful sound of the water and the motion of the trout and that sort of thing. And I look at all of these interests that I had when I was a kid, and it would have been, 30 years before its time, but it would have been perfect for me to go into environmental studies, as opposed to the path that I went into. Environmental studies probably hadn't been invented by the time when I went into college. What did you do as a kid? Were you fed directly into the path you're on now, or did you have some quirky interests like mine?
I loved nature. Nature to me was, it just felt sort of godly to me. So that piece, music, I was all about music. I was all about Christian music. Yeah. I thought I wanted to sing in a Christian band, and I thought I was going to marry a minister. And I was thinking about that this morning, like, gosh, why did I think I wanted to be a minister? And I think it was so I would have a role of nurturing and supporting others in a godly environment. And I realized that that's actually what I've created for myself, is a role of nurturing and supporting others in a godly environment. It's just an environment that I created. So I don't think I actually, I did stray off of that for, 30, almost 30 years of public school administration and teaching. But still, I tried to keep a healthy, nurturing environment in that. But I don't think I actually strayed that far off even during my career, if you will.
Mm-hmm. That was always something that was always a gear that was running in the back of your mind. Well, that's beautiful to hear. You make me think of something, and nature buff that I am. I'm going to paraphrase this quote from Ernest Holmes that said, "Nature is the physical manifestation of the mind of God, ever expressing and unfolding." Isn't that beautiful?
That's beautiful.
Nature is a physical expression of the mind of God, ever expressing and unfolding. And if you spend a lot of time in nature, of course, nature-based spirituality has been huge in my life. I think that's also a staging area, to let so much go, so that our intuition and for that flow to pull us in a certain direction. And we talked last week about, the ping and the thud. I think, again, listening to your intuition, what pings for you, sit down and pay attention to what's drawing you, as opposed to, we all remember the old Mitch Miller show where we just followed the bouncing ball. Too many times.
Okay, Linda, you're dating you and me because I know exactly what you're talking
I'm a
about.
lot older than you. But and kids' cartoons, they had this little red bouncing ball that would go along the words, and sometimes we go through our lives like that. We're just following the bouncing ball, and we need to stray away from that. Anyway, your intuition is a great way to steer you toward your gifts. I also happen to think, we listed skills, we listed qualities, but one thing that came up in the meantime was looking at street smarts. I mean, a lot of people have absolutely no street smarts. I wonder how they maneuver through life. And, people like you and I and other guests that you've had on the show, who've had, working backgrounds, professional backgrounds, where we had to acquire a lot of street smart skills. For me, I had to learn how to maneuver through the legislature, which was complicated and had certain, very strict protocols and so forth, and just learning how to move, easily in different environments. There are great skills to have. Another question I had here was how much people pay attention to their intuitive gifts. We all have intuitive gifts. And again, if we get into following the bouncing ball, we let less of this intuitiveness come through us and express, who we really are. My guide sent me this image that we all had this luminescent core. It looked almost like a milky quartz crystal, like this luminescent core, and it had different lights and different flavors and different colors. That just represented, all of these qualities that are uniquely ours. We're all, remember we talked about bandwidth. We're all, a bundle of frequencies. And we each have a vibrational frequency that will cause us to be drawn to certain activities and interests of similar harmonizing frequency. Mine always seem to be around, earth and nature, but you may be called to be, a great engineer or a great mechanic, and that's going to have a different, resonance to it than being a great composer or being, an environmental, everything has like a different frequency to it. I don't know if you have different frequencies of things that you're drawn to. Do you have any examples on that?
Again, well, music. For one, and I know that you are into music as well, but music can drive me to tears faster than anything. Mm-hmm. Music just like totally straight through my heart, straight through my soul.
And you're talking tears of joy, of course.
Or connection,
impassion,
or longing,
connection,
or empathy. It's not always tears of joy. Sometimes it's such a strong sense of almost longing. And this is brilliant. I'm just putting this together. I almost wonder if when that happens to me, am I unwillingly reading the energy of the person as they were composing it?
Well, that's really interesting, and we should come back to that because music is, you're a frequency, you're a vibrational frequency, and the music is also a vibrational frequency. So you're stepping, you're becoming a perfect match of harmony with that frequency. That would be just in itself a pretty enlightening moment. But reading the energy of the person, so here we have somebody who's pulling huge quantities of creativity out of the air to compose. And here we have someone like you who's pulling huge quantities of creativity out of the air so that you can do, the enlightening work that you're doing. These are two similar frequencies, two similar qualities. And maybe you're, connecting with some kind of a soulmate on a higher level.
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. I hadn't given that any thought before, so I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, we'll put some more thought into that. I want to tell you a story about a wonderful woman. We talked last week about how important it is to find your tribe and how elevating it can be and how much it feeds your confidence to step into new endeavors, to be validated by your tribe, to have someone from your tribe, someone who's one of your peers, giving you praise. And I was fortunate about 5 years ago to meet a woman named Meredith Young Sowers, who is the Still Point Foundation and the leader of one of the clairvoyant courses that I went through. And she had a great term called panning for gold. And this is a second chakra issue where you go in and look at all of the gems, all of the little nuggets of gold that have come into your life. You're panning for gold and you're pulling them out and you're looking at them and seeing how they've contributed to your life as you've moved forward. And sometimes I can look back and say, well, that was a kind of an odd, disjointed thing for me to do. And I look back today and see, oh wow, there really was a reason for that. That was put in my path, as part of this whole unfolding that I'm going through. And I just thought of one that I hadn't even thought of. When I was in college, I was a volunteer on the college radio station. I was a DJ, and I never thought that 80 years later, after I graduated from college, I would end up on a radio show with Ruth Anderson.
That's so funny. That is so funny.
I know. You and I were both involved in theater in our past, and I think that, members of your family are. I can't think of anything more valuable than theater to instill in young people just that piece of poise that then contributes to their their success, their public speaking, all of their communication skills. It doesn't really matter what you do in life. If you have great communication skills, you're going to do it better. I spent a very brief time in my early life as a newspaper reporter, and again, it gave me some exposure to the publishing world. Yeah,
I'm just laughing. Yeah, I'm laughing. Yeah, I'm laughing because I myself have now gotten into the newspaper world. It's just freaky. I think you and I are living one life. I don't know. It's strange to me.
But, you're writing something creative. I was the newcomer in the newsroom. And this is back in the old days when you had ticker tape, going in the background all the time, and you wrapped it up and then you paper clipped it and sent it down to the press. I mean, these are really the old days. And but just having that exposure to publishing, to writing, to communication, came very handy later on. I had two wonderful opportunities in my life going through leadership development programs that, gave me more confidence in working with groups, how to lead groups, how to bring people to consensus. And then, of course, I always go back to my background in nature and what a gateway to spirituality that's been in my life. My father had been a forester, and we spent a great deal of our time in the woods. And when I was coming out of my dark ages, especially as a means to calm the trauma in my life, I would start hiking all the time, because when you get out of nature, all that trauma fades away from you. And it was when I was out hiking when I first started having clairvoyant experiences about 10 years after I started seeing energy fields. So I don't know. You want to share some of the things that you thought were just zany and quirky when you were young that have come in really handy to you later on?
Well, it's interesting how the activities and the experiences and the skills that we put into our toolbox from having lived those life experiences have come into making me who I am today. And I was never one for zany. You might have done zany, but this persona has never done zany in her life. But
I was a 60s child, remember?
Oh, well, there we go. I was
Okay.
I was a 70s.
Okay. Go ahead.
But as Spirit was bringing me along on this journey of becoming this, speaker, writer, etc., I was wondering, well, so why me? Why did they pick me? And then as I looked back at my life skills and, my devotion to God, I was educated, I was an educator, I was retired, I had time, I had a background of working with people, I had really no skeletons in my closet to speak of. I started changing the question to why not me? It actually seemed like I was the perfect candidate when I looked at everything in my life coming together all at once. So, yeah, I see the progression of skills and how it helps develop us into this person that we are now.
Mhm. And do you think that before you came into this lifetime, you had that soul contract that that you said, yes, I will step up to the plate. I will be your instrument.
I do believe that was part of my soul contract. And interestingly, when my father passed, I was part of a soul contract with him that I was going to help lead him to wrap up his life and have a spiritual journey on his way out. I never could have fulfilled my soul contract with him had I not fulfilled the soul contract with myself to become a spiritual being, providing this education experience for other people.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. It's all so wrapped up on top of itself, I think.
And that's a really interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's a really interesting parallel with my life. Also, it was only through my spiritual beliefs that I was a willing and effective caregiver for my father in the last week of his life when he chose to quit eating and drinking and to pass. And I was his coach and his partner through that process. So, these are, I hadn't thought of it that way. Thank you so much, Ruth. That's really valuable. I will hang on to that. The next thing I had on my note here was, along with embracing our gifts, Meredith encouraged me that if your teacup is full, you're not going to put any more tea into it. So a lot of becoming who we are becoming is letting go. So there are those voices that we talked about, before who said, be ladylike, don't be too big for your britches. Be ladylike was a big one for me as a tomboy. There are a lot of voices that are part of our conditioning that we need to let go of.
And Linda, I'll tell you what mine was from both of my parents. Don't take up too much space in the world.
Oh dear gosh!
Yes, make yourself small. So for me, I had to let go of that one big time to be able to write and put that out in the world, and then to get on the radio and put that out in the world.
So look at the amount of space between don't take up too much space in the world and why not me? You want to talk about a quantum leap.
Mm-hmm.
And again, was that something that came as a flash to you, or is it something that developed in you over a period of time?
It was a slow, arduous process.
It goes back to what we were saying about you have to do the work. When you invest, I am so going from don't take up too much space to why not me. You should put that on a sticky note. That would make a good book, Ruth. That would be an excellent book. That would be your fourth book.
There we go.
Oh gosh. Again, we're going back to what do you need to let go of. what urged you into a practical career, going into logical pastimes. Fears. What were the fears that held you back? I've always complained about my fear of technology, and I'm working with it. I can't say that I've conquered it, but I've come along. I have come a long way. Another thing, from my past was a sense of lack. In the whole Puritan ethic upbringing that we have, there was always, there's always a sense of lack in there that I had to overcome. But there was another one that kind of stood out for me. I mentioned before or last week that I had a wonderful counselor named Susan who helped me go through my identity change, and she always warned me against of second guessing myself and thinking that I was a fraud. I wasn't really as talented as I thought I was, and what she called the stinking thinking. We've all been guilty of the stinking thinking. So stay away from the stinking thinking, because you know why? Because why not me? That's where your thinking needs to go.
Nice. Yep. Another one of our family ones was I'm not worthy.
Worthiness.
Yes.
You have to earn it.
Oh, no, I'm not even sure it was earnable. I think both of my parents came in with such small thinking. They were not worthy. And so how could anything from their loins ever be worthy? If you're starting out with damaged products, two damaged products reproduce, you're getting a damaged product. So, they had 4 damaged kids. So that was a big one.
That is an enormous leap that you have taken in that process. I was just thinking. I was reading something the other day that our parents instill fears in us, thinking that they're protecting us. Like, don't expect too much. If you don't have high expectations, then you won't be disappointed. And, by teaching us their fears, they actually think that they're protecting us, which is, it's important to understand why people do the things they do. It makes it a little easier. I'm quickly going to talk about, people will say, well, why do I have the gifts that I have? And you and I just touched on that, because we have a soul contract, and they're all like, lanterns along the path, but they're all, spirit expressing through us. We are all expressions of God, and spirit has put us here with these talents so that the force of spirit can live through us. That's why we're enjoying. That's why we're having a good time. And again, they're all in line with our lessons for this lifetime. They help propel us onto our life's purpose. And again, you look back at, I'm thinking about some other things that came up in my past of life purpose. I always kind of had a bit of a knack for writing. I remember being in the 8th grade, and my teacher accusing me of having my mother write my homework assignment for me.
Oh, goodness.
And I think of you and I singing in choruses much of our lives, and how the skills that you develop from that, not only from the memorization process, but harmonizing and working with other people. And one of the things I loved about choral work was, again, it just raises you. You get into these dense 4-part harmonies, and it gets you into just these intense frequencies. I think that's why there's such a high to it. And I thought too, there just are no coincidences. Spirit feeds things into your path. When I was a little girl, my grandmother bought me a set of all the Broadway musicals, and of course these are on vinyl. And I had a complete set of all of the popular Broadway musicals, and you may have an interest, and a neighbor just happens to have an old camera or pass down some, or you go to a yard sale and you find some old calligraphy pens. Just little things that come into your path, and these really aren't coincidences. I actually, had a boyfriend in my 20s that I recycled in my 50s after I had cancer. There was no coincidence that he had come into my life earlier, so he would be there later in life when I really needed somebody to support me. There just are nothing is by chance. They're sent to us by the divine for a purpose, and their life skills and temperaments. Whether you have patience or you have quick timing, how much resilience you have. And I always count one of my greatest assets as having a lot of grit and determination, and I don't give up easily. And I think that's been nature, but there's been some nurture behind that certainly as well.
Linda, do you have any thoughts on what happens when people deny those gifts?
Well, you're shutting down that expression that God gave you. You were given these gifts for a reason, and when you shut down, I think that I'm just closing my eyes and picturing it. You would fall into a really very, 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 very low frequency, almost like that would fall eventually into into almost a despair, eventually, and become dysfunctional if you shut down all of them. I know that, there's one. I'll tell you the story. After my father died, I went on a hiking trip to get more clarification, and I asked what his purpose had been in his life. And they said that his purpose had been to learn sense of duty. So in his lifetime, he would have been given certain circumstances and skills and so forth that would have taught him sense of duty, which he did extremely, extremely well. But he actually had overdone his sense of duty at the expense of his own life vision. And that's why he had intermittent depression problems his whole life. So when you suppress your life mission or suppress those skills, again, you're going to fall into dysfunction, either physically or mentally. At least that's my interpretation.
Yeah, well said. Very well said.
I think
so
they are also the. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It's how you interface with the world and so forth. Oh, we are getting tight on time, aren't we? I think one thing I'd like.
No, we've got 2 minutes.
Okay. One of the things, point I want to make sure to say is you complete the cycle of your gifts by putting your gifts out to others. Too much of our time we stay back. We don't raise our hands. We don't speak up. We live in self-doubt. And when you put out your voice, then you're always nurturing these gifts. My friend Phyllis Kirk wrote a wonderful book called Quantum Light Simplified, and she has a great quote here. She said, "The world responds when you announce to it what is special about you, what you want, and what you are committed to." The world responds. So here's, you're holding out your basket. You're letting the, spirit, fill it. When you announce what is special about you, what you want, and what you are committed to. If you step up to the plate, the universe will answer. Another important thing that I want to mention that my friend Meredith and I are always passing along to others is the importance of supporting others. And I have this quote from Mike Dooley that says, "Most people have been judged, criticized, invalidated, and emotionally beaten down to the point that their self-image has been shriveled." I'll paraphrase. "If even one visionary friend finds the light in you and fans the flame, your life becomes a whole new story. If you find the light in one person and magnify it with your intention and support, you raise above the mire of worldly negation and fuse love in a space once bleak. The encouragement you give does not stop with the recipient. It will expand through roots far beyond your imagination." And I think that's beautiful, and it ties back with what you and I are trying to do in just when we touch someone in some way, we never know how far those ripples are going to go. You know, what you and I are talking about today will send out ripples that will, you know, affect people way beyond our imagination.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Linda, you have touched so beautifully tonight on embracing your gifts. And it's been such a gift for me to hear this. Do you have any questions that you want folks to think about during this next week?
I do have a few suggestions. Questions. Make note of how skills from your past have contributed to where you are today. It's fun to just take a look at those. Has it really surprised you that an old skill came in so handy later on in life? This is not a coincidence. It is spirit talking. You can also note ways that you can enhance your skills by outwardly expressing them in the world. What we talked about in putting your gifts out. Think of things that you can do to encourage others to embrace and express their skills. Again, further that momentum. And then a focus exercise for you. Take a look at what may have held you back from moving forward on a project with me and my technology. And if you could erase that from your list, take it aside and just ignore it, and then watch a new force of energy rise and propel you. If the path is yours, then Spirit will take care of the details. All you need to do is say, yes, I will. Just step up to the plate.
Beautiful. Okay.
Any questions for me?
So, no, because we're actually out of time.
Okay.
So I'd like to thank
you,
Linda, for being with us. Folks, if you would like to check out Linda's work, please go to her website at spinstratagoldnow.com. Thanks for listening in. It is always a pleasure to have all of you with us. It's truly an honor to be among the hosts of International Angels Network, and I look forward to walking with Spirit and you next Thursday, June 21, 2018. God bless.